Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Gleason. I'll be your instructor for this course, History 2112, Survey of American History since 1877. I just wanted to post a video because we weren't able to meet in person this week. We won't be able to meet until next week. So I wanted to post a video that goes over the syllabus so you can understand what I expect for you, what you can expect from me for this course, and hopefully it will answer any questions that you have. Now, I'm going to email a link to this, and I'm also going to post this on Desire to Learn. If you have any problems accessing Desire to Learn, please email me and let me know, and we'll work through that. So real quick, let's just go through this. This course is, if you would like to, hopefully you can pull up the syllabus and go through it with me. This is a core course. It is the second part of the American history course that Clayton State teaches, that most colleges teach in the U.S. And so this is we're essentially going to do American history from 1877 to the present, right? So it's kind of the second half. We'll talk about why 1877 is important when we get there, but real quick, you'll notice if you have any kind of disability, here's the contact information: Disability Resource Services, Edgewater Hall. There's the number, and then the Disability Resource Center at clayton.edu. I'm happy to accommodate anything that I need or that you may need. Just let me know, but you have to go through those proper channels, right? So real quick, I want you to look down. Course description, make sure your number is correct. I have 3 sections of this course that I'm teaching, so make sure that your CRN number and your section number corresponds to what you've registered for. This is a 3-credit hour course. It's essentially a survey of modern American history. It's meant to, as the description says, highlight the basic themes, ideas, and periods that have shaped American history. We're going to focus on intellectual, social, political, religious, and cultural history, right? So we're going to make it a little more fun, hopefully, than just learning dates or wars or battles. I mean, we're going to talk about some of those things, but really we want to talk about why they're important, right? How they happened, how culture in America has changed, what ideas have shaped America, how those ideas have been challenged, how there's been friction. So I don't want you to think that this is going to be an irrelevant or boring course, because I think it's very pertinent to what's going on in today's society. There are no prerequisites for this course. Here you'll see my instructor information, Dr. Gleason. My email is cgleason@clayton.edu. It's very important. There is a messaging system. This is really important. There's a messaging system within D2L, an email system. Please don't use that. Please email me directly. Sometimes I won't get it. It's supposed to forward to my email, but it's often, in my experience, has been unreliable, and I don't want you to try to be reaching me and not be able to, right? So email me from your student email, right? Your Clayton student email, not a personal email. Might end up in my spam, which I don't check that often. Your official email to my official email. That way we have certain receipts that we're talking to each other, right? My office is in the Arts and Science Building, room G210D. My office hours are 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Or by appointment. I can meet digitally via Zoom. Teams is what we use. Teams actually is how we will do it. But if you have any questions about that, just let me know. Our meeting room, make sure your meeting room it matches, because I'm generally talking here about History 2112, but make sure that your CRN and your room numbers. If you have any questions about that, or if there's a discrepancy, just let me know. Class time's the same. Computer requirements: you have to have access to a computer for this course, not only because there's a potential that, we don't know what's going to happen and we could go digitally, but you're going to turn in all of your work digitally through Desire to Learn, right? So this is an in-person class where a huge part of your participation grade comes from your attendance and participation, but any of your graded written work is going to be turned in using Microsoft Word through D2L. So you have to be able to access that, whether you're using a Mac or a PC. Very important. needs to be have access to Microsoft Word. I really do not like Google Docs. I mean, obviously you can save Google Doc as a Microsoft Word and do it, and that's how you should do that if you're using Google Docs. But I often have people send me stuff that I can't open, and if I can't open it, then I can't grade it, right? So that's important. And then obviously you need to be able to access Outlook, right? You can bring your computers to class. I'm okay with that. I take notes digitally. It would be hypocritical for me to say you couldn't. If it becomes a distraction, I will ask people to put them away, but hopefully that won't happen, right? Distraction or, yeah, I mean, just if it's distracting other people or if people just aren't engaging in class and they're staring at their laptops, then I will ask people to put them away. But COVID course, obviously I'm coming out of the brunt of COVID after not getting it for 2 years somehow. But that could affect the way we conduct class, right? So as of now, this is an in-person class, and I'm looking very forward to that. I've been teaching online for 2 years now, almost exclusively, except for a couple exceptions. And I really love being in the classroom and the engagement and talking to people and discussion and stuff like that. So I'm really hoping that that's going to endure, but we don't know what's going to happen with waves of the virus or whatnot. So the university does reserve the right to transition this course completely online if that needs to be. Let's hope it doesn't, right? All right, real quick, learning outcomes. General outcomes in History 12, be able to communicate effectively using appropriate writing conventions and formats, effective evaluating claims, arguments, and evidence, use the results of analysis to appropriately construct new arguments and formulate new questions, and effectively use computers and technology appropriate to the discipline to learn to analyze primary source documents according to their own historical context. Now, what does all of that mean? Essentially, put very straightforward, all of that means is you will learn to talk about the major themes of American history in this course. You're going to talk about the claims, the ideas, the fights, the disagreements that have kind of shaped American society, and you're going to be able to put those in your own words, analyze them, come to your own questions about why they're meeting, communicate those questions to the people around you or your students, to me, and then you're going to be able to write about those as well, right? Use the technology to write about that, and you're going to be able to look at something that comes from the 1960s or something that comes from the 1920s and say, oh, well, this is clearly something that comes from this era, and I know this because, right? So that's essentially what those goals are, right? Course specific goals, this is, we're going to identify key people, events, and changes in American culture in the 20th century, late 19th, 20th, and early 21st, right? So essentially 1877 to the present. So that is the timeline. Textbook here, David Emery Shai, America, A Narrative History, Volume 2. Important that you get Volume 2. There is a Volume 1. The first half of this course uses Volume 1. You need Volume 2. Please don't buy Volume 1. This comes in digital and physical formats. So if you go, and we do encourage you to use Clayton State's bookstore, the Lock Shop. If you go there, you can either get a hard copy if that's what you like. I love hard copies. I use them all the time. I also have a digital copy. Or you can buy a little strip, take it up to they give you a little strip of paper, like a QR code kind of thing. You take it up to the register, they ring you up, and then you can download the book digital format, right? All right, so you're probably most interested about the evaluation here. So there are 3 components to this class, right, as far as how you're evaluated. First is attendance and participation. Obviously, attendance is a difficult thing. I don't have a black and white attendance policy. What I'm looking for is engagement, participation, and you showing up, right? So if you miss something and you bring me an excuse why you missed, like me, you have a documented case of some illness. I actually put in bold here, your excuses can be related to university-sponsored events, legal obligations, religious observances, or documented illnesses, right? So if you miss something, you bring me that, show me, then you're off the hook for that, right? What I'm really looking for is that you show up and you engage, right? If you come late and you leave early, you sleep, or you don't come, obviously that's going to really hurt that 10% grade. But these are not huge classes, so I can kind of get a feel for most everyone. And so if you show up and you engage, ask questions, make a comment, just show that you're reading the material and you're thinking about it, and you're putting work in, then you should probably get full credit for that, right? So keep that in mind. Primary source analysis. This is I have the most questions about this one. Throughout the semester, you will write 4 one-page papers, right? And these are going to be, they're not research papers. You're going to have a reading every week, and I've already posted the first 4 of these on D2L, and you are going to pick one of those, and you're going to write a one-page paper that is going to tell me who that person is. You're going to put the words of what they wrote in your own words. This is what they're saying. This is the point they're trying to make. And then for the last half, you're going to say, this matters because, or we know this is coming out of this era because, or this, this person fits into the context here because we know this. If we're talking about Columbus, for instance, you can say, this is who Columbus was. This is what he is saying in this. And that's really the meat of these. I want you to be able to put in your own words what someone from a historical period is saying, so I can see that you can interpret them correctly. And then I want to be able to see that you can tell me why it matters. Why are they saying this? What perspective are they coming from? What's the larger context, right? So we'll talk about this a little bit more in class as we come to the first deadline. What's important to note, 2 things. There are different sets. So for the first 4 weeks, you'll pick one. Then you'll have a couple weeks after that where you'll pick one, and so on, right? So if after those first 4 weeks are done and you pick one of those first 4, you can't go back to those first 4, right? You have to choose, whatever sources are in that set that we're in. So that's important. Second, this one I'm a real stickler about, and I'm not a stickler about a lot of stuff. But some of you coming from high school, particularly, or trying to use MLA format, will try to write a one-page paper where the first 1/4 of the page is taken up by my name, your name, the date, the class, this huge header at the top that takes up the first 1/4, 1/3, sometimes even half a page, depending on how people do it, right? That is unacceptable here. I know my name, I know your name, I know the date, I know the class. I don't need any of that information. I want a full page of your thoughts and analysis, right? So please keep that in mind. You can write your name at the top, but even that's not necessary. When you turn it in through D2L, I see who you are, right? So your name is automatically attached to it. So you can really just start at that first line and write a full page. We'll talk about that more in class. Lastly, the third component, you could argue that there's 4, but really it's 3 tests. There are 2 in-class tests at 15% apiece. It's going to be a mixture of multiple choice and essay questions. Pretty straightforward. We'll talk about those a little bit more as we get a little closer. I'll give you kind of a little study guidance for them, if not a formal study guide. And then there's a take-home final. And this take-home final is essentially going to be 2 essay questions. I'm going to give you a number of essay questions, probably 3 or 4, and you're going to pick 2, and you're going to write 2 pages on each. So your final for 20% of your grade should be a 4-page reflection paper, right? And it should have evidence from the material that we've covered in class. It's not an opinion paper. It's going to have opinion. You're going to write an opinion or a position, I should say. It's an argumentative paper, and you're going to support your claims with the evidence that we've talked about in class. But you're going to have over a week and a half to do this. There's a week review where we're talking about them in class. I'll do some modeling. The purpose of this is so that you can learn to digest information, come to your own conclusions, and communicate those effectively on paper. This is a skill that's going to help you not just here and not just in your life, but in your college career as you go forward, to be able to write concise argumentative papers, right, using material that you've been presented with. And you'll have plenty of time. The purpose of this is not for me to trick you or make it hard for you to get a good grade. It actually is so you will have time to formulate your own opinions based in fact, right, and argue them. So I think everyone should be able to do well there. And I can work with you too, moving up to that as well. The grading scale is pretty straightforward: 90, 80, 70, 60. 10% grades go into it. There is a midterm progress report, so by March 1st, I will essentially let you know where your standing in the course is, and you can decide whether you want to continue or not. If you do not, you can withdraw by March 4th. You have to do it by March 4th, and if you do that, you can leave the class with no academic penalty. I mean, obviously you might lose some money, or I don't exactly know how that works, but I do know that if you withdraw with a W before March 4th, if you don't like the class, or you don't think you're feeling good about how you're doing, or whatever, it won't hurt your GPA, right? Now, if you stay till March 5th, you will be stuck with whatever grade you get in the course, right? General policies. No-show policy is important. So this is complicated by the fact that we're not going to see each other. I actually put a discussion board up to help with this. So there's an introduction discussion board under D2L that I'd like you all to go in and introduce yourself. That way I can get to know you a little bit. You can get to know, it doesn't have to be in depth. It can be as much or as little as you want, right? This is also a way where you can talk to each other. I encourage that. That way if you miss class, you can have somebody to pick up the notes with or whatever. Or talk about, y'all can just start talking about the stuff, have conversations online. That would be great. But I think one of the things that's very significant about this is I need to see that you're participating in this class on some level, or at least showing up by January 20th, or I have to drop you. This is a financial aid issue. Financial aid, the federal government doesn't want people getting money and then not coming to class, right? So if you're not engaging in the course or showing up by January 20th, I have to say I haven't seen this person, or I don't know who they are, and you'll get dropped. Academic dishonesty, don't cheat. I have access to plagiarism detection software that uses algorithms to sniff out, copy, paste, not well reworded paraphrases. If you have any questions about what classifies as academic dishonesty, obviously there's a link there that you can see. You can talk to me about it as well. Basically, just don't cheat. Do your own work. I am way more willing to work with someone who is struggling and trying than who is trying to cop out and take the easy way out, right? If you get caught cheating, I am ethically bound to turn you in. It's not up to me. I have to, okay? So keep that in mind. Disruption of the learning environment. This could be a really fun class. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. Feminism, gay liberation, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement. I mean, there's so much stuff that is so relevant to today's conversations that we've had today that really formed the society that we live in. And that being said, people are going to have opinions about these things, right? And so this should be a space where we can talk about those ideas without being attacked. And that goes both ways, right? Like if you depend, whatever your perspective is, as long as it's not hurting someone else, then you should be able to voice those things and to talk about this in the context of the historical moments that we're talking about, right? So to make sure that this is a non-aggressive yet open to cultivating new ideas space that we're talking. COVID-19, there's some health and safety syllabus addendums here. Obviously, if you've been diagnosed, been in close contact, that show symptoms, you're not supposed to come to class, right? Email me, let me know if there's some issues with that. I'm going to be, obviously, given my quarantine that I'm in now, I will be sympathetic to those things. Do not abuse that, please. I know people are not getting COVID multiple times in the semester, right? So take that as it is. There's a Center for Academic Success, the CAS. If you need one-on-one review, just want someone outside of the classroom to talk about these, this content or themes or anything like that, it is free. There is a email address, the cas@clayton.edu, CAS, right there. It's also in Edgewater Hall, Suite 276. So there you go. If you have any questions about that, I can help. And then lastly, weapons. Don't bring weapons to class. They are prohibited. There's a link there if you have safety concerns. Real quick, I want you to look at this course schedule because this is going to clear a couple things up and kind of give us a trajectory for the course. So You will notice that week 1, we are doing class 1 right now. This is the syllabus overview. I will talk a little bit more about why we study history in class, but I think you'll see especially why this class is really pertinent to and relevant to society now. Class 2, we're going to look back at kind of the first half of American history, what's covered in there. That way we'll kind of have I do that for continuity, so we can kind of see where we're coming from and where we're going, right? We will be reading W.E.B. Du Bois, Black Reconstruction. It's an excerpt from a larger work that he wrote called Black Reconstruction, so it's a little passage that comes out of that. So you'll notice that that's already on if you look under analysis sources, under Desire to Learn. I've already posted week 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we're going to be reading. So very quickly, we'll have no classes on MLK Day. Whether this is a Monday or a Tuesday course, I wanted to keep things consistent there. So we're going to have no class on MLK Day for either one of those. Okay. So if you're a Monday, Wednesday class, we'll be meeting on Wednesday next week. If you're a Tuesday, Thursday class, we will be meeting Thursday next week. Okay. Week 2, we will be reading Andrew Carnegie, his Reflections on Wealth. Week 3, we're going to talk about the New South and the closing of the American West. Joseph we'll hear Chief Joseph on the Indian affairs there. Week 4, we're going to talk about I have a thing on week 4 where I won't be here on class 7, but class 8, we're going to talk about the expansion of American empire. We'll be reading Mark Twain. Now, you'll notice that we're coming into week 5. We're going to talk about the progressives in World War II. I give you a whole week to write essentially your analysis on those first 4, right, after that 4th one. But you'll notice that this analysis 1 is due on Sunday at 11:59 on February 13th. You have to choose one of those first 4 readings. So for that first analysis, you're going to give me a 1-page analysis on Black Reconstruction or Carnegie, Wealth, or Chief Joseph, or Mark Twain. So you can pick which one you like most, which one you think is most interesting, or either like or don't like. Maybe you just want to write because you don't like it, whichever one you pick. That has to be one of those 4. Now, as we move through into week 6, we're going to talk about the 20s and the Great Depression. We're going to have a test on class 13, right? So we'll talk about that when we get a little bit closer. But that's a full class where we'll be taking an in-class test. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the New Deal. Week 8, World War II and the foundations of the Cold War. And then you'll see that analysis 2 is due by March 6th, by midnight on March 6th, 11:59. And that is going to be over weeks 5 through 8. So for that one, you have to write on the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire video, the history of the Flappers, FDR's inaugural address on week 7, or George Kennan Long Telegram, right? And those that's going to be due by March 6th. And then the last day to withdraw, by then you will have at least one analysis graded and back to you. You'll have one test, so you'll kind of know where you stand essentially in the class by then. And you can decide if you want to stay or not. Then we're going to have the spring break. After that, when we come back, we're going to talk about the 1950s, this kind of facade of American consensus or unity, and then we're going to talk about what are the cracks in that? How is that a mirage, right? And what's essentially going to lead to the civil rights movement, queer liberation, feminism, all this really expansion of these what we would call identity politics or liberation movements that really define the 1960s, 70s, and really spark these culture wars that then define the 80s and 90s and really the world that we live in today, right? So we're going to read The Lavender Scare there, about how gays were persecuted in the 50s. We come back, we're going to talk about the civil rights movement. We're going to read MLK and Malcolm X that week, Ballot and the Bullet and Letter from a Birmingham Jail. And then week 12 is going to be a little different, right? So you'll notice that class 21 is essentially going to be an in-class, I say debate. It's really going to be a discussion. Maybe, depending on the class dynamic, it might turn into a debate. But we're going to read some primary sources that come from the 1960s, right? So you're going to have the Port Huron Statement, which is kind of like the New Left, Young New Left. You're going to have this National Organization of Women's Statement of Purpose. That's going to be like second wave feminism, kind of a foundational document. The Gay Liberation Front, the Weather Underground, Declaration of State of War. Those are kind of more militant hippie types. And so we're going to talk about what does the 60s mean? Why is it important? And we're going to come to some conclusions there. But so that's going to be very heavy. Now, you'll also notice that when we're going to come back that next day and talk about the 1970s, but this analysis that you have due by 11:59 on April 3rd, you can choose any of those readings from weeks 10 to 12, right? So you can write on the Lavender Scare, MLK or Malcolm X, or any of those that we're going to talk about in class, right? So that should be fairly engaging and straightforward. 13 through 15, we're essentially going to, after we take that test on class 23, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about, essentially, we're going to become a little more political. We're going to talk a lot about culture still, because those overlap, but we're going to try to kind of make some sense out of our current political climate, right? So we're going to talk about the Reagan Revolution and why that matters. We're going to read Ronald Reagan, and then we're going to talk about the culture wars, how the rise of conservatism changed liberalism, right? So we're going to see the birth of what we call neoliberalism. We're going to read we're going to have some more, and I try to offset the political discourse or talk that we have in class with some kind of cultural, which are very political too, material, right? So Anita Bryant Save the Children is a anti-homosexual crusade that happened during this. So we're going to read, or we'll see, pro-queer, how these different factions of American society have been battling, right? So I want you to see that culture war that's happening, right? And then as we come down to the end, we'll talk about Bush through Barack Obama, and then into Trump. Right, and we'll read Pat Buchanan talking about the culture war some more, addressed to the Republican National Convention. And then you will write that last analysis. We will have a week of review where we'll talk about the kind of these finals, or this final that you'll have. And during that time, I will give you kind of the overarching questions that I will ask you for that take-home final, and you can start to outline your essays for that, right? So you'll have, a week and a half to do that. So I hope this was beneficial. I look forward to seeing you all in class. I love being in class. I love not feeling the way I feel the last few days. And hopefully by the time I see all of you mid next week, everything will be back to normal as it can be. And we will be able to talk about these very interesting and very relevant things face to face. So until then, please look on the discussion board, look over the syllabus. I will post announcements going ahead and getting you reading the textbook, right? We're going to go ahead and start reading the first chapters of the textbook this week, and then we'll move into meeting in person next week. All right. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to meet you all.